You know, sometimes the most beautiful love stories don't begin with a first date or a chance meeting at a coffee shop. Sometimes, they begin 30,000 feet in the air, with a child's cry piercing through an airplane cabin and a 7-year-old girl who simply couldn't stay in her seat. This is a story about compassion. About how one small act of kindness can change not just one life, but 4 lives forever. It's about a single father and a millionaire CEO who had absolutely nothing in common except for one thing. They were both broken by loss, both struggling to be enough for their children, both searching for something they didn't even know they needed. And it's about 2 children who taught their parents the most important lesson of all, that love doesn't need words. It doesn't need the same language. It just needs courage, the courage to reach out when someone is hurting, even when the world tells you to stay in your seat and mind your own business. So buckle up, because this journey is going to take you from the cramped seats of economy class to a love story so beautiful, so unexpected, that it'll remind you that miracles really do happen. And sometimes, they start with a little girl who simply refused to ignore a crying child. Let me tell you how it all began. It was a November evening, and Dr. Marcus Chun was exhausted. Not just tired, exhausted. The kind of bone-deep weariness that comes from being a single father, working full-time as a pediatric occupational therapist, and trying to be both mom and dad to a 7-year-old daughter who'd already lost so much. He was sitting in seat 19, economy class, on a flight that should have been routine. Just another trip. He and his daughter Sophia were heading to Boston to visit his sister for Thanksgiving. Sophia sat beside him, her dark curls pulled back, her purple sneakers tapping softly against the seat in front of her. Marcus had his eyes closed, trying to catch a few minutes of rest before they landed. But then he heard it. The cry. Not just any cry. Marcus had worked with children for over a decade. He knew the sound of a tantrum, the sound of a hungry baby, the sound of a kid who just wanted attention. But this? This was different. This was raw, desperate distress. This was the sound of a child who was drowning and couldn't find the surface. His eyes snapped open, his hands instinctively gripping the armrest. His professional brain kicked in immediately, analyzing the sound, the pattern, the urgency. Something was wrong. Really wrong. And then he felt movement beside him. Sophia was unbuckling her seatbelt. "Sophia," he said, his voice low but firm. She didn't stop. She didn't even look at him. Her small frame slipped past him with a kind of determination that Marcus recognized, the same determination her mother had possessed, God rest her soul. "Sophia," he called louder this time, using the tone that usually made her pause. But not today. Today, his daughter was on a mission, and nothing was going to stop her. She was already moving up the aisle, weaving between flight attendants and confused passengers, her purple sneakers padding softly against the carpet. And Marcus? Marcus was scrambling out of his seat, muttering apologies to everyone he had to climb over, his heart hammering in his chest. What was she doing? Why wouldn't she stop? They were going to get in trouble. They were going to be kicked off the plane. But even as these thoughts raced through his mind, another part of him, the part that knew his daughter better than anyone, understood. Sophia had heard something in that cry that he'd been too tired to fully process. She'd heard a child who needed help. And Sophia, his beautiful, empathetic, healing-hearted daughter, simply couldn't ignore it. By the time Marcus reached the first-class cabin, a place he definitely didn't belong in his worn khakis and wrinkled shirt, Sophia was already kneeling in the aisle beside a young boy. And the crying had stopped. Not gradually. Not with the slow winding down of a child being comforted. It had just stopped. Replaced by a silence that somehow felt louder than the screaming had been. Marcus froze, his prepared apology dying on his lips. Because Sophia's hands were moving. Flowing through the air with graceful precision, forming shapes and signs that the little boy was watching with wide, tear-stained eyes. And then, the boy's own hands began to move. Hesitant at first, then faster, more urgent. A conversation was happening. A silent, beautiful conversation between 2 children who had never met before. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. Beside the boy sat a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. A beautiful black woman with elegant braids, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. But her face told a different story. Her makeup couldn't hide the exhaustion carved into the lines around her eyes, or the way her hands trembled as they gripped the armrests. She was staring at Sophia with an expression Marcus had seen before in his work, the look of a parent who'd been drowning and suddenly felt air in their lungs. I'm so sorry, Marcus started, moving forward to collect his daughter. She shouldn't have. The woman held up one hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Her eyes never left Sophia's moving hands. Is she signing to him? Her voice was carefully controlled, but Marcus could hear the crack underneath. Is she understanding what he's saying? Marcus nodded, watching as Sophia's hands moved through another series of signs. The boy responded, his movements becoming calmer, more deliberate. Then Sophia turned to look at her father, and what she signed made Marcus's heart break and soar at the same time. Daddy, he needs his blue blanket. His grandmother made it for him. It's in the silver case up there. He says it smells like her and he can't fly without it. He's scared because he can't find it. The woman's composure shattered like glass. Her hand flew to her mouth, and for a moment, Marcus thought she might break down completely. Instead, she stood up so fast she nearly hit her head on the overhead bin. His grandmother's blanket, she whispered, her voice breaking. Of course. Of course that's what he needs. She looked at Marcus, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Why didn't I? I couldn't understand him. I couldn't understand my own son. Marcus stepped forward, using his height to reach the silver carry-on case. He pulled it down carefully, and the woman's hands were already unzipping it before he could set it on the seat. She pulled out a hand-knitted blanket in shades of blue, an intricate pattern that spoke of hours of love and patience. The boy's face transformed the moment he saw it. His hands reached out, grabbing the blanket and pulling it to his chest, burying his face in its soft folds. The change was immediate and profound. His entire body relaxed, his breathing evening out as he clutched the blanket like a lifeline. And Sophia? Sophia kept signing. Gently, patiently, she asked about the blanket, about the patterns knitted into it, about the grandmother who had made it. The boy's face shifted from distress to something that looked like wonder, the wonder of finding someone who understood his language perfectly, who saw him not as the crying child disrupting the flight, but as a person with something important to say. The woman sank back into her seat, her eyes fixed on her son. Thank you, she said quietly, barely audible over the hum of the engines. Then louder, thank you. I should have understood him. I've been learning sign language for 2 years, but when he gets upset like this, when everything becomes too much, She closed her eyes. I fail him. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. He'd heard this before, this particular flavor of guilt. He'd felt it himself on countless sleepless nights after Isabella died. He crouched down so he was at eye level with her. It's not failure, he said gently. It's hard. Sophia's been signing for 4 years now. She had to learn for different reasons, but even she has days where communication breaks down. You're not failing him. You're here. You're trying. That's what matters. The woman opened her eyes, and Marcus saw something in them that made him look away, vulnerability, raw and unguarded in a way that felt too intimate for strangers on an airplane. A flight attendant appeared beside them, her professional smile kind. Perhaps the children would be more comfortable if the young lady stayed up here for a bit? We have an empty seat across the aisle, sir, if you'd like to sit there. Marcus glanced at Sophia, who was already showing the boy a new sign, her face lit up with joy. If that's okay with you, he said to the woman. Please, she said immediately. Please, if she doesn't mind. Cameron hasn't been this calm since. She swallowed hard. Since his grandmother died. 6 weeks ago. The weight of that sentence hung in the air between them. Marcus settled into the seat across the aisle, and for the next 3 hours, he watched his daughter work the kind of magic he'd seen before but never quite like this. Sophia and Cameron, he'd learned the boy's name, played games with their hands, their fingers forming stories and jokes and questions. Their silent conversation was more animated than most spoken ones Marcus had ever witnessed. The woman sat beside her son, watching everything with an intensity that spoke of memorization. Marcus noticed her hands moving slightly, mimicking signs, trying to learn from Sophia's patient teaching. Somewhere over Pennsylvania, Marcus caught her eye. She gave him a small smile, sad but genuine. I'm Nicole, she said. Nicole Morgan. Marcus Chun. And that's Sophia. She's remarkable. She is. Marcus felt the familiar swell of pride mixed with something more complicated. She's teaching me new things every day. Nicole nodded, her eyes drifting back to the children. Cameron is my whole world, but sometimes I wonder if I'm equipped to be the parent he needs. I think every parent wonders that, Marcus said softly. Hearing kids, deaf kids, somewhere in between. We all wonder if we're enough. Are you traveling for Thanksgiving? Nicole asked, and Marcus recognized it for what it was, a lifeline thrown to safer conversational waters. Visiting my sister in Boston. She's been begging to see Sophia. It's been a year since our last visit. You. Going home. I had business meetings in Chicago. I usually don't bring Cameron on business trips, but after my mother. She stopped, redirected. I couldn't leave him. Not right now. The grief in her voice was fresh, still bleeding. And so Marcus told her. He told her about Isabella, his wife, Sophia's mother. About the morning jog that never ended. About the brain aneurysm that had stolen her from them 4 years ago. About coming home from his shift at the hospital to find police cars in his driveway and his entire world shattered. He told her about Sophia's silence. 6 months without a single word. 6 months where the only way he could reach his daughter was through signs, through the language they'd built together in the quiet spaces where words had failed them. I work at Rosewood Children's Rehabilitation Center, he explained. Pediatric occupational therapy. I help kids find ways to communicate, to connect with the world around them. But when Sophia stopped speaking, his voice caught. I had to use everything I'd ever learned professionally to reach my daughter personally. Sign language wasn't just about communication for us. It was about survival. Nicole's eyes glistened. I can buy Cameron anything, she said quietly. The best therapists, the latest technology, education at schools most people can't even imagine. But I can't buy him what Sophia just gave him, a friend who sees him as completely normal. Who doesn't see his deafness first and him second. Who just sees Cameron. You sound like a mother who loves her son, Marcus replied. Money doesn't make that any easier or harder. We're all just doing our best with what we have. Nicole laughed shakily. My ex-husband left when Cameron was 2. Said he didn't sign up for this kind of life. As if Cameron was a burden instead of a blessing. She watched her son signing animatedly with Sophia. So it's been just us, me and Cameron and my mother. Until. She didn't need to finish the sentence. As the plane began its descent into Boston, Sophia showed Cameron how to pop his ears safely. When the wheels touched down, Cameron looked at Sophia with pure gratitude, his hands moving in signs that Marcus recognized as thank you, repeated 3 times. The flight attendants were busy preparing for arrival, and Marcus knew they needed to return to their seats. Sophia gave Cameron one final sign, something that made him smile, before reluctantly standing up. As they gathered their things, Nicole reached out, her hand briefly touching Marcus's arm. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through him. Could I get your contact information? The question came out rushed, as if she'd been building courage to ask it. I'd like to thank you and your daughter properly. Maybe lunch, if you're free during your stay in Boston. Cameron would love to see Sophia again. And I. She paused. I'd like to talk more. About communication strategies. About a lot of things. Marcus hesitated. Something about this felt significant in a way he couldn't quite name. But Sophia was already signing excitedly about seeing her new friend again, her hands moving so fast Marcus had to ask her to slow down. He pulled out one of his business cards from Rosewood Children's Rehabilitation Center, writing his cell number on the back. Sure, he said, handing it to Nicole. Her fingers closed around the card like it was something precious. Like it was a promise. Like it was the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted, but both of them desperately needed. As they walked off the plane, Sophia slipped her hand into Marcus's. She looked up at him and signed, Daddy, I think Cameron and his mom needed us today. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. I think maybe we needed them too, sweetheart. He had no idea how right he was. No idea that 3 days later, his phone would ring. No idea that a simple lunch would turn into something that would change all 4 of their lives forever. Sometimes love doesn't announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it starts with a child's cry, a grandmother's blanket, and 2 broken families finding each other in the most unexpected place. Sometimes it starts 30,000 feet in the air, in the space between silence and sound, where the only language that matters is the language of the heart. Three days later, Marcus's phone rang while he and Sophia were walking through Boston Common with his sister. The number was unfamiliar, but something made him answer. "Dr. Chun, this is Nicole Morgan. From the flight." He remembered her voice immediately, that careful control overlaying something more vulnerable, something real. "I was wondering if you and Sophia would be available for lunch tomorrow." Cameron hasn't stopped talking about Sophia. Well, signing about her. There was a smile in her voice now. It would mean a lot to him. To us. Marcus glanced at Sophia, who was feeding ducks at the pond with his sister. She looked so happy, so unburdened. Since Isabella's death, he'd made it his mission to preserve every moment of her happiness. "Tomorrow works," he said. "What time and where?" The restaurant Nicole suggested was elegant but family-friendly in downtown Boston, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a kids' menu printed on thick cardstock. Marcus felt underdressed in his khakis and button-down, but Sophia had insisted on wearing her favorite dress, and her confidence bolstered his own. Nicole looked different off the plane. Still polished, that seemed to be her natural state, but softer somehow. She wore dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that made her look less like a CEO and more like someone's mom. Her braids were styled differently, framing her face in a way that made Marcus's breath catch for just a moment. Cameron's face lit up the moment he saw Sophia. His hands flew in excited greeting, and the children fell into easy conversation immediately, their hands dancing through signs while Marcus and Nicole settled into chairs across from each other. "I realized I was quite a mess on the plane," Nicole said with a self-deprecating smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm not usually so unraveled." "You were a mother whose child was in distress," Marcus replied gently. "That's not being unraveled. That's being human." Something in her expression shifted, softened. Over pasta for the kids and salad for the adults, the story emerged gradually, piece by piece. Nicole was the CEO of a sustainable energy company she'd built from nothing into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. A self-made success story that had cost her everything else. "My ex-husband left when Cameron was 2, she said, her voice carefully neutral in the way that suggested old wounds. Said it was too hard. Said he didn't sign up for this kind of life, as if Cameron was a burden instead of a blessing." She watched her son signing animatedly with Sophia about dolphins. "So it's been just us, me and Cameron and my mother. Until she..." Her voice broke slightly. "Until she died 6 weeks ago. Kidney failure. It was sudden. She was the one who truly understood him, who could calm him when I couldn't. She taught me to sign, pushed me to learn, but she was always better at it than me. More patient. More intuitive." Nicole's eyes glistened. "I'm still learning how to do this alone." Marcus found himself sharing things he rarely talked about. The morning he came home to find police cars in his driveway. The neighbor who'd found Isabella collapsed on the sidewalk 3 blocks from home. The way Sophia had stopped speaking entirely for 6 months, her voice swallowed by grief too big for a 3-year-old to process. "I used everything I'd ever learned professionally to reach my daughter personally," he said quietly. "Sign language wasn't just about communication for us. It was about survival. It was about finding each other again in the darkness." Ava set down her fork, her full attention on Marcus. "I can buy Cameron anything," she said quietly. "The best therapists, the latest technology, education at schools most people can't even imagine. But I can't buy him what Sophia just gave him, a friend who sees him as completely normal. Who doesn't see his deafness first and him second. Who just sees Cameron." "You sound like a mother who loves her son," Marcus replied. "Money doesn't make that any easier or harder. We're all just doing our best with what we have." "But you've given us something priceless," Nicole insisted, and there was an edge of frustration in her voice now. "And I don't know how to repay that. I don't know how to." She stopped, seeming to hear herself, and laughed shakily. "I'm sorry. I must sound so out of touch. Privileged CEO who thinks everything can be solved with money." "You sound like someone who cares," Marcus said gently. "That's not out of touch. That's exactly the right touch." Their lunch extended to 3 hours. The children were devastated when it finally had to end, so Nicole suggested meeting again in 2 days at Boston Common. Marcus agreed, watching Sophia's face light up with excitement. The park meeting turned into an afternoon at the New England Aquarium, where Cameron and Sophia pressed their faces against the glass tanks, signing to each other about the octopuses and sea otters. Marcus and Nicole walked behind them, conversation flowing easily between comfortable silences. "My mother would have loved this," Nicole said softly as they watched the children. She always said Cameron needed friends who understood him. Not just tolerated him, but truly got who he was. "Isabella would have loved seeing Sophia like this too," Marcus replied. "My wife always said our daughter had a healer's heart." It was the first time either of them had spoken about their lost loved ones without the conversation feeling heavy with unspoken grief. What started as a promise became a pattern. Monthly weekend visits that quickly evolved into twice-monthly trips. Then every weekend. Nicole would arrange flights for Marcus and Sophia to come to Boston, or she and Cameron would fly to Miami. The expense was nothing to her, she insisted, compared to seeing Cameron thrive. Marcus watched his daughter bloom in her role as Cameron's best friend and interpreter. Sophia taught Cameron signs he didn't know, helped him navigate interactions with hearing kids, showed him that being deaf didn't mean being limited. And Cameron, in turn, showed Sophia the beauty of deaf culture, the rich community she'd only touched the edges of before. But something else was growing too. Something Marcus tried not to examine too closely because it felt both inevitable and impossible. He found himself looking forward to the adult conversation as much as Sophia looked forward to seeing Cameron. Nicole was brilliant in ways that intimidated him at first. She could discuss renewable energy policy and stock market trends with the same ease that she discussed Cameron's latest developmental milestones. But she also made him laugh with stories from her corporate world that seemed like science fiction compared to his hospital environment. She asked his advice about Cameron constantly, valued his professional expertise, but never made him feel like a consultant. She wanted to know his opinion on everything from discipline strategies to whether Cameron should attend a mainstream school or a deaf school. And in the quiet moments when the kids were playing and the adults were simply existing in the same space, Marcus would catch Nicole watching him with an expression he was afraid to interpret. Hope. Longing. Something that made his heart race and his palms sweat like he was a teenager again. Six months after that first flight, Marcus's phone rang late one evening. Sophia was already asleep, and Marcus was reviewing patient files at his kitchen table when he saw Nicole's name on the screen. His heart did a little flip. Their calls usually happened during the day, coordinating visits. Late-night calls meant something different. Something important. Marcus. Her voice sounded tight with something that sounded like nervousness. Nicole Morgan, CEO who commanded boardrooms full of powerful men, sounded nervous. "I need to tell you something." "Okay," he said carefully, setting down his pen. "I'm listening. I'm restructuring my company. Moving our secondary headquarters to Miami." The words came out in a rush. It would mean Cameron and I would be there at least 2 weeks every month, maybe more. Marcus's heart forgot how to beat properly. That's a big change. A huge change. "Cameron needs Sophia," Nicole said quickly. "They're teaching each other so much. Sophia's helping him connect with the hearing world in ways my money and therapy never could. And he's showing her the beauty of deaf culture, the pride in it. They're good together." "They are," Marcus agreed, his mouth dry. He waited, sensing there was more. "But it's not just that." Nicole's voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Marcus, I think I'm falling for you." The world tilted on its axis. "I know that's probably inappropriate," she continued, words tumbling out faster now. "Given everything you and Sophia have done for us. I know the power dynamics are complicated and maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but I can't keep pretending that I'm just interested in our children's friendship. I look forward to seeing you. I think about you when you're not around. And I hope, that maybe you feel something similar. But if I'm wrong, please just tell me and we can pretend this conversation never happened and—" "Nicole," Marcus interrupted gently, his heart now beating so hard he could hear it in his ears. "I feel the same way." The silence on the other end of the line was profound. "Really?" Her voice was small, vulnerable in a way he'd never heard from her. "Really? Really? I've been trying to figure out how to say the same thing for the last 2 months. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, that someone like you wouldn't be interested in someone like me. That the universe doesn't work that way. Someone like you? Nicole laughed, but it was shaky. Marcus, you're the first person in years who's made me feel like I'm more than a CEO or a single mother or a walking bank account. You see me. Actually see me. Do you know how rare that is? They talked until 2 in the morning. The conversation flowed from feelings to fears to the future they might build together. It felt terrifying and right in equal measure. Marcus admitted his worries about their financial differences, about being seen as someone who'd latched onto her wealth, about losing himself in the shadow of her success. Nicole addressed it head-on, her voice firm. You gave me my son back, Marcus. You and Sophia showed me how to be a complete family again. You taught me that understanding matters more than control, that patience matters more than perfection. There's no price tag for that. There's no amount of money I could offer that would equal what you've given us. But. No buts, she interrupted. I have money. You have emotional intelligence and parenting wisdom that I desperately need. We both bring something essential to this. It's not about equal finances. It's about equal partnership. Can you accept that? Marcus closed his eyes, feeling tears prick at the corners. I can try. That's all I'm asking. By the following autumn, 1 year after that chaotic flight where their worlds had collided at 30,000 feet, they were a family. Not officially, not yet, but in all the ways that mattered. Nicole had bought a house in Coral Gables, a beautiful colonial with enough bedrooms for everyone and a backyard where the kids could play. She kept her Boston place for business trips, but Miami was home now. Their home. The 4 of them had created something beautiful in that house, a space where both spoken and signed languages flowed freely, where Sophia's voice and Cameron's silence were equally valued, where differences were celebrated instead of merely tolerated. Marcus moved in slowly, cautiously, bringing pieces of himself and Sophia into Nicole's world. His books filled her empty shelves. Sophia's drawings covered the refrigerator. His coffee maker sat beside her espresso machine. Small integrations that became big commitments. One evening, as they sat on the back porch watching the kids chase fireflies in the humid Miami twilight, Nicole had taken his hand in the darkness. You gave me my son back, she said simply. You and Sophia showed me how to be a complete family. You taught me that understanding matters more than control, that patience matters more than perfection. There's no price tag for that. Marcus had kissed her instead of answering with words, and that had been answer enough. Their love story unfolded slowly, built on the foundation of respect and shared values, and the recognition that they each completed something in the other. Nicole brought security and resources, yes, but also ambition and a different perspective on the world that challenged Marcus to think bigger. Marcus brought grounding presence, emotional availability, and therapeutic wisdom that helped Nicole finally forgive herself for not being the perfect mother to Cameron. Together, they established the Isabella Evelyn Memorial Foundation for Deaf Children, combining Nicole's business expertise and resources with Marcus's therapeutic knowledge and compassion. They were already helping hundreds of families navigate the challenges and joys of raising deaf children, providing resources that many couldn't otherwise afford, training interpreters, and advocating for better inclusion policies in schools. The foundation was named after both their mothers, honoring the women who had shaped them into the parents they'd become. The women they'd lost but who lived on in every family they helped, in every child who found their voice, whether spoken or signed. 2 years after that first flight, 2 years after a little girl had refused to stay in her seat when another child was crying, Marcus and Nicole married in a small ceremony at the Miami Botanical Garden. The November sun filtered through the palm trees as their closest friends and family gathered. Sophia and Cameron served as ring bearers, both of them dressed in matching outfits they had picked out together. Sophia in a purple dress that matched her iconic sneakers, Cameron in a purple tie that made him look impossibly grown up. But before their parents exchanged vows, the children stood before the gathered friends and family and signed their own promises to each other. Promises of siblinghood, of friendship, of always being there to interpret when the world got too confusing. Promises to love each other not in spite of their differences, but because of them. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Marcus's sister was openly weeping. Nicole's business partners were dabbing at their eyes with handkerchiefs. Even the photographer had to pause to compose herself. When it was Marcus and Nicole's turn, they spoke their vows, but they also signed them. Every word spoken aloud was also spelled out in the air, a promise made in two languages, meant for two worlds that had become one. "I promise to see you," Marcus said, his hands moving in perfect synchronization with his words. Not the CEO, not the success story, not the bank account. Just you. The woman who loves her son more than anything. The woman who's brave enough to admit when she's scared. The woman who gave me a reason to believe in second chances. Nicole's voice trembled as she responded. "I promise to value you. Not just for what you do for Cameron, but for who you are. The father who turned his greatest pain into his greatest strength. The man who taught me that love isn't about perfection, it's about showing up every single day and trying. The man who made me believe that our broken pieces could make something beautiful together." When they kissed, sealing their promises, Sophia and Cameron started applauding. A silent applause from Cameron, a joyful noise from Sophia, and soon everyone joined in. Two families had become one. For people who'd been broken by loss had found a way to be whole again. 5 years after that November flight, the Isabella Evelyn Memorial Foundation had helped over 2,000 families. Sophia was 12 now, fluent in 3 forms of sign language, ASL, signed English, and even some international sign. She was already talking about becoming a deaf education teacher, already volunteering at the foundation on weekends, already changing lives the way she'd changed Cameron's on that airplane. Cameron was 11, confident and happy, attending a mainstream school where he thrived with the support systems Nicole and Marcus had fought to put in place. He had friends, hearing and deaf, and he moved between both worlds with an ease that made his mother cry happy tears. The family had grown too. Nicole and Marcus had a son together, little Liam Morgan, who was learning sign language before he could speak, growing up in a household where communication came in many forms and all were equally valued. On quiet evenings, when the chaos of 3 children finally settled into sleep, Marcus and Nicole would sometimes pull up the video from that flight, a recording a passenger had taken and sent to Nicole weeks after they'd met, a gift she'd had professionally transferred and saved. They'd watch Sophia unbuckle her seatbelt and march up that aisle with purpose. They'd watch the moment her hands started moving, the moment Cameron's crying stopped, the moment 2 children found each other across the divide of sound and silence. And they'd remember that love is sometimes loud and sometimes quiet, sometimes spoken and sometimes signed. But always, always worth the courage it takes to reach across the aisle and say, in whatever language you know, "I see you. I hear you. You're not alone." One evening, as they watched the video for what must have been the 100th time, Nicole leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if Sophia had stayed in her seat that day?" she asked softly. "Every single day," Marcus admitted. "But I think about it less as chance and more as recognition. Sophia recognized something in Cameron's cry that I was too tired to fully process. She recognized a child who needed the one thing she could give him. A voice," Nicole said softly. "More than that. Connection. Understanding. The knowledge that he wasn't alone." Nicole turned to face him. "None of us are alone anymore. That's what you and Sophia gave us. That's what you keep giving us every single day." Marcus kissed his wife, a word that still filled him with wonder, and marveled at how a 5-hour flight had somehow delivered him to this moment. To this woman. To this family they'd built from fragments of grief and loss and unexpected grace. Their story had become a testament to the truth that love doesn't always arrive when or how you expect it. Sometimes it comes in the form of a 7-year-old girl who won't sit still when another child is crying, who trusts her instincts over conventional rules, who believes that connection is more important than staying put. Sometimes it comes in the courage to reach across the airplane aisle, between economy and first class, between 2 worlds that aren't supposed to touch, between a single father working tirelessly to make ends meet and a CEO who could buy anything except what mattered most. Sometimes it comes in the space between silence and sound, where 2 families learn that the most important things in life need no words at all. Marcus and Nicole's merger wasn't just of 2 hearts, but of 2 worlds. A world where a millionaire CEO learned that the greatest wealth is understanding. Where success is measured not in dollars, but in the smile on your child's face when they find someone who speaks their language. And a world where a single father discovered that love can speak in any language, through any medium, as long as you're brave enough to listen. You know what the most beautiful part of this story is? It's not the happy ending, though that's pretty wonderful. It's not even the romance, though watching 2 broken people find each other is enough to restore your faith in love. No, the most beautiful part is this. It all started because a 7-year-old girl refused to stay in her seat. Think about that. Sophia could have stayed buckled in. She could have ignored the crying. She could have been a good girl and followed the rules. And if she had, her lives would be completely different right now. For people would still be struggling alone in their grief, in their inadequacy, in their loneliness. But she didn't stay seated. She listened to something deeper than rules. She listened to compassion. She listened to the voice in her heart that said, "Someone needs help, and I can help them." That's the lesson here. That's what we all need to remember. We're all on a journey together, all of us struggling with our own sorrows, our own limitations, our own fears that we're not enough. And sometimes the person sitting a few rows away, whether in economy or first class, whether speaking or signing, whether they look like us or nothing like us, that person is drowning. They're crying out. They need help. And you might be the only one who can hear them. So be brave enough to unbuckle your seatbelt. Be brave enough to walk toward the crying instead of away from it. Be brave enough to reach out, even when the world tells you it's not your business, even when you're scared you won't have the right words, even when you feel inadequate for the task. Because love doesn't need perfection. It just needs presence. It needs someone willing to say, "I see you. I hear you. You're not alone." Marcus and Nicole's story reminds us that the universe has a funny way of putting us exactly where we need to be, even when we're exhausted in seat 19 of a crowded flight, even when we're desperate in first class with a crying child we can't quite reach. The next chapter of your life might be waiting just a few rows away. The family you're meant to find might be on the other side of someone else's struggle. The love that will change everything might begin with one small act of compassion. So don't stay seated. Don't let fear or convention or exhaustion keep you from reaching out when someone needs help. Because sometimes, the most beautiful miracles don't announce themselves with trumpets and fanfare. They whisper in the flutter of small hands forming signs in airplane aisles. They arrive in the tears of a mother who finally feels understood. They live in the laughter of children who found friends who speak their language, whatever that language might be. And they all begin with someone brave enough to unbuckle their seatbelt and step into the aisle. Thank you for taking this journey with me. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear that second chances exist, that broken families can become whole in new ways, that love really does find a way even in the most unexpected places. Because we're all searching for the same things: connection, understanding, love. And sometimes, all it takes is one person brave enough to reach out when someone is crying. Be that person. The world needs more people like Sophia. The world needs more people like you. Remember, love speaks every language. Compassion needs no words. And sometimes, the greatest miracle is simply refusing to stay in your seat when someone needs help.